Hey everyone! It's time to settle in and get cozy. Today I'll be telling you the story of how I got my two adorable kitties and how it's changed my life and even inspired me to pursue art again. My cats have improved my life in so many ways, but the journey has also had its challenges. When getting a kitten, we really didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. In the beginning, it was really rough. It was even a bit of a nightmare. But stick around for the full story and I'll tell you all about it. When Lavender came into my life, I was not looking for a cat. Though I always loved kitties, I'd gone many years without having a feline companion. Here's a picture of her and her big pretty eyes. I love how she has such pretty white eyeliner. She's such a glamorous girl. It all began when my now husband and I moved in together. We would house sit for his father from time to time and take care of his animals. He had a couple of dogs and a cat. The dogs were boisterous and constantly wanting to be in our company, but I'd noticed that nearly every time we came to house sit, that I would never see the cat. I was starting to wonder if she was even around since I was not seeing her come out. Joseph, my husband, told me that she usually likes to hide under the couch. Apparently, that's where she would spend most of her time, since the dogs were so rambunctious and would often chase her and mess with her. I thought that was pretty sad that she was practically living under the couch and having to worry about harassment from the dogs. So I turned on my phone flashlight and shined it under the couch in search of the elusive kitty. I immediately saw the fluff ball crouched up, her little face and big glowing eyes peering back at me. Satisfied that I had located her, I informed Joseph that she'd been found. I then turned around and to my surprise, I saw she'd emerged from under the couch to present herself to me after being discovered. I was so excited to see that she'd come to join us and started petting her immediately. From that point on, she became my bestie. She would follow me around the house and cuddle with me every chance she got. Joseph told his father that Lavender and I had connected and asked if maybe we could adopt her. He had always had a connection with Lavender and had known her from the time she was a tiny kitten. He had previously talked with his dad about the possibility of adopting her, but I don't think he was ready to part with her. When I became smitten with Lavi, that's her nickname, I think that was the catalyst for his dad finally deciding to let us adopt her. And the next time we came to house sit, we ended up taking her home. Cats generally take a while to adjust to a new home, and Lavi was no exception. From day one, she would meow at me constantly, as if she was making demands. She's still quite a bossy kitty. She's pretty spoiled, and I think it's so cute. She was a little more vocal back then because of the stress of acclimating to her new home, and at first she spent a good amount of time hiding under the bed. It was probably the closest thing to her old comfort zone of living under the couch, but it didn't take her long to realize that her home was nice and peaceful and that there were no boisterous, barking dogs to be found. Within about a week, she was spending most of her time by the windows in the sunshine, sprawled out on the floor, baring her fluffy belly and cuddling with us on the couch. I could tell she was grateful to finally have a suitable environment for a sensitive creature such as herself, with no crazy dogs to spoil her peace. At first, Lavender wouldn't snuggle at night and would opt to sleep on the couch in the living room. But as time went on, she warmed up to me even more and would spend most nights curled up with me in the bed. Now, after about 5 years, I couldn't imagine my life without her. She's such a sweet companion who brings so much joy and peace to my life. She's so chill and her vibe has such a positive effect on my mood. Sometimes I think her laziness rubs off on me a bit though, since she spends a good portion of the day sleeping. Sometimes she'll spend the better part of the day in one spot. Right now, that spot is a specific pillow on the bed. She's such a creature of habit and will sit and sleep in the same specific spots around the house. She has the cutest body language too. She does this thing where she sits on the edge of a table and lets one paw hang down. It's one of her signature poses, that and crossing her paws in front of her like a little lady. Having Lavender in my life has improved my life in so many ways. Just having a sweet little creature who loves you and likes to snuggle makes life so much more enjoyable. I have a naturally nurturing personality, and I really love to have little creatures to take care of. She's a very loving and affectionate kitty. When I'm watching a movie or just relaxing, she likes to curl up with me and cuddle. She's so soft and fluffy too. Just petting her helps relieve my stress from the day. When I got Lavender, she even inspired me to start creating art again after a hiatus. I couldn't help but notice what a beautiful creature she was and felt inclined to pick up a pencil and draw her. Joseph and I used to joke about how she kind of looked like an owl with their fuzzy ear tufts and big eyes. It gave me the idea to draw her as an owl, or a meowl as we like to say. It was that drawing that inspired the idea of making prints and starting a business. It was from that point on that I started creating more and more art and then finding my momentum and inspiration as an artist again. Joseph and I even decided to name our business after her, Lavi Lee Designs. We used her nickname, Lavi, combined with my middle name. I'll put the link in the description in case you want to check it out and see more of my art and my husband's art as well. After having Lavi for about a couple years, we adopted Vash. It was a bit of a spontaneous decision to adopt him since we had no intention of getting another cat and we weren't sure how Lavender would feel about bringing another kitty into her world. She did seem quite content as an only pet. It all started when one of our neighbors reached out to ask if we or anyone we knew would want kittens. It turns out her tortoiseshell cat, named Torty, had a big litter of kittens and she was going to need to find homes for all of them. At first we were certain we didn't need another kitty in our lives since we were quite happy just having Lavi. With that in mind, we still wanted to go see how cute the new kittens were, because honestly, who wouldn't want to go see some cute kittens? We should have known what would end up happening, that they would steal our hearts and we would find ourselves with a new little addition to our household. We had met their mother, Torty, who, just like the name suggests, is a tortoiseshell cat. She was beautiful and very fluffy, and later we found out that she's part Maine Coon, so we imagined her kittens would probably be really adorable. We were right, the kittens were irresistibly cute. They were fuzzy, playful little babies, and they were so sweet. The neighbor introduced the kittens to us with the names they had already given them. They were 8 weeks old at the time, and they had plenty of time to give them all names. There was an adorable orange tabby boy named Garfield, who seemed to be the most rambunctious one of the litter. The whole time we were there, he was jumping around, exploring, and playing. He had a lot of energy. There was a gray and white little guy they called Boop because of a gray spot on his nose, and one cute, tiny torty girl named Felicia. Those were the ones I remember the most. It seems like the neighbor was trying to introduce those few as the ones they were trying to find homes for. I noticed as we were playing with the kittens that there was one lone black and gray tabby that was playing on his own on the other side of the porch where the kittens were all staying. He was prowling around, hunting bugs and shadows. He had the most beautiful velvety black coat with little silver stripes. I couldn't help but become curious about the little guy and wondered why he had not been introduced to us. I ended up inquiring about him eventually, and the neighbor brought him over to the table with the other kittens so we could see him. I immediately noticed how he was so dark with bright white outlining his eyes, which made him extra cute. He was such a beautiful little kitten. He came over to cuddle with one of the other kitties and purred as we pet him, and our hearts just melted. You could say he made an impression on us. Later that evening, Joseph and I were talking about the kittens and how he liked that little guy in particular, and it was clear we were on the same page. We needed that kitten. Since we weren't sure how Lavender would react, just to be safe, we decided we would take him on a trial basis to see how it would go. But honestly, we were set on making it work. We just had to have him. It really was such an exciting time. We had no idea what we were in for, though. Before the day we set to pick him up, we were preparing in anticipation of bringing home our little kitten. We bought toys, bedding, kitten food, and everything we would need for the little guy. When we went to pick him up, though, we were surprised when one of their kids cried because apparently that kitten was his favorite, which we had no idea. Though we explained that since we were neighbors, if he wants to come see him, that he can, and it wasn't goodbye forever. I felt bad, but the fact was that they really couldn't keep any of the kittens since they already had a few cats. The neighbor had informed us that they would need flea treatment since they had been living outside and had not yet been medicated since they were just at the threshold of being big enough to get treated. We went to PetSmart to inquire about the best medicine for our little tiny boy and what would be the safest treatment for a small kitten. This is where the story takes a bit of a turn. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. The lady we ended up speaking to at the store sounded really confident in the advice she gave us, and suggested we give him a bath and Dawn dish soap and use a flea comb to remove the fleas manually, as opposed to a spot-on treatment, since a lot of those treatments are for kittens 2 pounds and up, and he wasn't quite there yet. He was so little. So we got everything we needed, and we went home to commence the flea bath. To say it was a disaster would be an understatement. We brought him into the bathroom and closed the door since he and Lavi had not yet been introduced. Though we hadn't directly introduced him to Lavender, it was clear she could instinctively tell that something was awry. The flea bath was particularly unpleasant, especially for our poor little kitten, and his protestful meows rang out for Lavender to hear. Lavender, of course, heard him and stood outside the closed bathroom door, demanding to know what was afoot. She knew there was a kitten in there, and by no means was she pleased about it. To those who don't know, cats are really territorial creatures and strongly dislike having other felines in their domain. At one point, when I had to come out of the bathroom to get something, Lavender followed me. I had washed my hands and reached down to pet her. She immediately sniffed my fingers and for the first time ever, hissed loudly at me. She knew we had a kitten and she was pissed. That was actually quite stressful for me, and I even had a nightmare that evening in which she bit me. Though she's such a sweet kitty and she'd never do that in real life, never has. The flea bath was nothing short of a nightmare of its own. When we ran the water over Vash, the water ran red. And I don't know if any of you know what that means. He was infested way worse than we had imagined. I felt so bad for him, it was horrific. The lady at PetSmart had told us to put a ring of dawn around his neck so that the fleas wouldn't go towards his head, and that advice turned out to be completely useless in this scenario. The fleas became excited by the soap and started trying to crawl into his eyes. The ring of dawn did nothing. It was disgusting. These fleas were nothing short of evil. But not only that, they started jumping off of him, and we would try to catch them before they got away into the environment, but there were so many of them. It was like an endless wellspring had been opened up and they were pouring out. We kept combing them out and washing them down the sink, but they just kept spawning. And poor Vash was having the worst time of his life. And despite our best efforts to comfort him and remove the fleas, we were failing miserably and he was just getting more frightened. Sadly, we had to throw in the towel that night and return him to the carrier on our porch while we formulated a new plan. We quickly made our way back to PetSmart to see what other options we had in the battle against the fleas. Thankfully, we met a very nice woman who had very different and much more helpful advice than the first person we had talked to. She just didn't have the best solution for us in our situation since the infestation was far greater than we had imagined. This lovely woman directed us to a product that was safe for kittens that were 1.9 pounds and up. So Vash just barely qualified because he was exactly 1.9 pounds. I was a bit nervous about using the medication on him, but we had to do something to cure him of the monsters that were terrorizing him. I had learned that the level of infestation that he had can be life-threatening to kittens, so I knew we had to act fast. When we returned home, we gave him the treatment and decided to let him spend the night in the carrier while it worked its magic. I was so eager to bring him inside, snuggle with him, and get him acclimated to his new home. I checked on him constantly and tried to spend time with him out on the porch while he was in the carrier, just to try to comfort him so that he wouldn't be scared and lonely. Thankfully, the treatment was nothing short of a miracle. When we checked him after waiting for 24 hours for the treatment to do its job, we thoroughly brushed him with the flea comb and found no signs of them. It was as if they never existed. It was bizarre, but we were grateful. Our troubles weren't over yet, because getting Lavender and Vash acquainted was our next challenge. Since Lavender was not so pleased to have a kitten around, it proved to be difficult at first, as we imagined it may be. The introduction, of course, went as expected, and Lavi let out a healthy hiss at the sight of him. We knew we had a long way to go, but I'd been doing my research and learned how to help with the process of warming them up to each other. We had to keep them in their separate spaces in the beginning and slowly acclimate them to each other with controlled sessions together. We had to be very vigilant when bringing them together since Vash was so tiny and I wasn't sure what Lavender would do if he got too close. It was slow going at first. Lavender wanted nothing to do with the playful little guy. She's a very mellow cat who likes to spend most of her time peacefully lounging around and cuddling with her humans. Vash, on the other hand, was a spunky little kitten with a constant need to play. She would watch him from a high perch as he chased every shadow in sight while she kept her distance. Eventually our efforts paid off and they started to warm up to each other, but it took a lot of work. Having them play together while rewarding them with treats in each other's company was one of the most effective methods of helping them bond. It still took months and a lot of patience to get them to the point where Lavender wouldn't hiss at the sight of him. Now they are so close and spend most of their time together. They seem so synced up too, and I often find them doing the same thing, like bathing themselves in a synchronized fashion, even moving at the exact same speed. It's actually kind of strange, as if they have some telepathic connection or something. I actually noticed after we got Vash that Lavender became a much more playful cat too. I think Vash's spunkiness rubbed off on her. Vash was such a crazy kitten. I knew that kittens tend to be rather nuts, but Vash was on another level. It often seemed like he would never rest. He needed constant play and would have the zoomies for the better part of the day. He would also get into everything. Because of him, I've actually become a bit of a minimalist just due to the fact that if anything is left out, he will mess with it. Every cord had to be put away because he would chew on them. Any little thing that he could get his little paws on, he would play with it, and oftentimes he would try to eat things that he shouldn't, so I had to be really vigilant with him. Early on, he learned to open drawers and would pull everything out. He would also chew on almost anything he could get his little teeth on. It was like having a really spastic baby who tried to eat everything in sight. I imagine having a kitten like him is kind of like what having a toddler would be like, but I don't really know, so maybe having a toddler is harder. But he was a nuisance. An adorable, sweet little nuisance, but he kept me on my toes. I felt like I had to be constantly vigilant of making sure he didn't eat anything that he shouldn't and keeping him away from anything he could break or chew. He was actually pretty dog-like in a lot of ways too, and sometimes it even felt like I had a puppy rather than a kitten. He would even play fetch with his favorite kicker toy, his candy corn, which was a small dog toy that I found in the Halloween bin at PetSmart. His candy corn has become like his little teddy bear. He carries it around in his mouth and cuddles with it. It's really cute. He also does this strange thing where he sits on it as if he was a chicken sitting on an egg. He would also do this thing that I'm glad he's finally grown out of, where he would try to knock the pictures off the wall. No art was safe since he was a world-class climber and jumper too. It was all actually really exhausting, but all worth it for my tiny boy. It didn't take long for him to become a bit of a menace to Lavender due to his constant desire for battle. Even to this day, he still wants to wrestle with her more than she prefers. He'll approach her and start giving her kisses. That usually means he's gearing up for battle. I think the kisses are just buttering her up in hopes that she'll spar with him. He's just playing, but it can really get on Lavender's nerves. Then I have to separate them for a little while. He's grown to be such a sweet and calm boy now though. He's 3 years old and he spends a good portion of the day sleeping and the rest of the time following me around. He and Lavi always sleep next to each other and they've bonded as if they came from the same litter. I actually think using Felloway Multicat may have really helped with this, since it has a pheromone that helps kittens in the same litter bond with one another. Vash is huge now too, and I think it's due to him being part Maine Coon. He's around 20 pounds. He has the fluffiest and longest tail I've ever seen too. It's just so adorable. His tail is like another creature all its own. He does the cutest thing lately where whenever I'm in the kitchen preparing food, he sits directly down on my foot. Kind of like he does with his candy corn, like a chicken sitting on an egg. He can never seem to get enough attention. From the time I rise, he's hovering over me, purring loudly, and burrowing under the covers. I can say it was well worth enduring his crazy kitten phase. He's the sweetest now. He's just a big snuggler. He and Lavi are so affectionate and sweet, and I couldn't imagine my life without my little creatures. They are the most wonderful companions and they bring so much laughter, joy, and fun to our lives. I'm never lonely since I have my furry little feline friends by my side. They, along with my husband, really helped me get through some of the hardest challenges I've faced in my life. And I'm not going to elaborate on that here because it's very personal and that's a whole other story on its own. A few years ago, I was coming out of one of the most difficult times in my life where I struggled with a lot of loneliness. Having their adorable and loving influence in my life has really improved my outlook and lifts my spirits on a daily basis. Their love and loyalty make such a difference. If you're thinking of getting a cat of your own, I really hope this has been insightful and given you an idea of what it's like. If you've never had a cat before and you're looking for an easier experience, I would recommend adopting a full-grown cat as opposed to a kitten, since they are usually much calmer and lower maintenance. But if you're up for a bit of a challenge, raising a cat from a tiny kitten can be very rewarding, and you might get lucky and have a more mellow kitten too. But from my experience, most of them have a bit of a crazy kitten phase. I hope you enjoyed my story, and thank you so much for watching to the end. And I want to say thank you to my new subscribers. I really appreciate that you're along for the ride. And if you're new to the channel, I invite you to subscribe and become a part of this community that's about living your dreams, living a creative life, and art, of course. And cats too. They're just as much a part of this channel as I am because they're some of my biggest inspirations. Thanks again, I'll see you in the next one.